Hi, this is Beth Reimer with the National Writing Project's College Ready Writers Program. And if you're watching this screencast, then what that means is that you're looking to create a CRWP text set of your own. I'm guessing that also means that you've looked into the mini units and you've thought that you want to use a mini unit with your students, but that maybe the model text that's listed in the CRWP website isn't exactly going to work for your students at this time of the year, at this readability level, or with the interests that they have right now. And you're thinking that you might want to swap the texts within that mini unit. So yeah, let's do it. So before we get started though, I want to note that it seems simple. Just gather a bunch of texts from around the same topic and you'll have a text set. Although it makes a lot more sense to be intentional and think through a few considerations before you get started. At this point, I'm guessing that you've already started those considerations. That's why you're choosing a new text set. And now we're getting ready to actually get searching. So in this screencast, I want to talk through how I filled in a CRWP text set graphic organizer to help me think through creating a text set. So let's get started. Right here at the top, the first box, I already decided that I wanted to use the mini unit making informal arguments. That what I wanted is for my students to practice making claims based in text and where they would gather evidence from a text to come up with their claim. That means that my topic can be fairly general and open to a range of possibilities. In that case, what I did is next I have to think about what my topic is. Where do I get my inspiration? Maybe it's from a text that we're reading, maybe it's from the news, or maybe it's from a conversation, which is where this topic came from, school field trips. The question came up, are we going to take a field trip this year? And we started talking about what are all the reasons that a school does and doesn't take field trips, and which field trips we would take anyway. So I thought it was a perfect topic for a making informal arguments. Students could absolutely make claims about field trips. And I'm not sure they need lots of background knowledge about what a field trip is, but they might need to know some information around why people do and do not favor going on field trips. Before I start to search, I think about possible search terms. This little box is kind of important. You know, in our world today, we just Google things, which is actually not a bad idea when we just want a bunch of information. But when we want to focus a search and we want to think about what we're really looking for a text set, we might want to come up with possible search terms that will lead us to information that our students could use for their argument. And in that case, I came up with possibilities, of course, field trips, but maybe educational trips, or maybe pros and cons, or maybe the cost of field trips, or the value of field trips. In the end, I think these will get me somewhere, and if not, I have a ... and I can keep thinking. I've also thought about the number of texts needed. For a Making Informal Arguments mini unit, I only need 3 or 4 texts. I'll go ahead and look for more, but I only need it in mind to have 3 or 4 to round out that mini unit. So I get started using my search terms and Google and the resources that I'm used to looking at, some magazines and sites that I really love. One of the very first articles I put down here is a link to an article that has both a graph and an article. I really like the idea that there's a graph. That helps some students think in numbers. And I like that it's a pro. It reviews a study of field trips at Crystal Bridges. So it's pretty specific. It is a longer article, and I would have to support students in how they read. So I'm going to go ahead and add in there that they will need support as they read in order to use the graph and find the main idea, since it is longer. Another text that I thought about using is USA Today. That has a pretty easy readability level, so I add that over here, and it's a short article. It mentions the disadvantages and does provide some background information, which I really like. There isn't much research, though, that's stated, and it's much more opinion and a discussion. So I'll have to keep that in mind as to whether or not it's a text that I want to use. I decide I want to look for something else other than an article, so I think about infographics. And I do find an infographic, and it mentions the benefits of field trips. I do write over here this reading strategies. I know that with an infographic, sometimes say mean matter is a great strategy for us to use. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that up here as a possibility for us to use. I go to The Atlantic, which is a magazine I love, and I do find an article about why the demise of field trips are bad news. It's an article that's pro field trips, and I like that it brings up the idea of theater and the idea of the reward versus a culture field trip. It's a new angle that students might be able to use in their claim. It does also bring up the cost of field trips, which is a con and a reason why field trips are not in schools quite as much. It is a longer article, so I note over here that it's going to have to be excerpted in order for us to use it. Even though I only need 3 or 4 texts, I go ahead and add some more, just so I have many texts to choose from. I find a Denver Post article, no research again, and personal opinions. Also on personal opinions is this article around debate.org. They're debates, so they're not really informative because they are complete opinions, but very short and easy to read. And they do provide both sides. So I'm thinking that it might be a place for some students to provide or see a claim or another point of view so they can get to their own claim. That might be a possibility. Another article over here provides the benefits of field trips. And finally, I'm thinking I want an article that sets up an easy to read for some of my struggling readers. So I go to Time for Kids and I find a debate article. It is mostly pro though, instead of showing pro and con. And it talks about the use of educational field trips. There are a few facts to use as evidence, so that might be possible. And it is easy to read. So now I have lots of possibilities. And before I move on, I want to think, out of all of these possibilities, could students make a claim? A claim more than field trips are good, field trips are bad. And I think so. I think that we could say something about field trips being useful educational tools. I think we could say something about the difference between reward and culture or educational field trips. And I think that we could note even the con about the cost. I do wonder, though, if we have enough information for this con. So I'm keeping that in my mind, that we might not have enough information. So let's check the checklist of review questions to make sure I've thought of everything. Are there multiple genres? There are. There's a graph, there's an infographic, and there's articles of various levels. I'm good there. Are there enough evidence to support multiple or nuanced claims? I think there are. When I go up here, they're not just going to say field trips are good or bad. It looks like from the evidence, they're going to have to say why and explain what kind of field trip they're talking about. So I like that, and I'm going to go ahead and check it. I think I do have that. Is there enough evidence to provide a line of reasoning? I don't think I can check this one. There's evidence to provide reasons, and students are going to be able to make a claim. But to develop a deep line of reasoning, I don't think we're going to be able to do that right now with these set texts. And that might be okay. Because remember, the mini unit I chose was making informal arguments. And I just want them to dip their toe into making a claim based in what they read. So we might be okay there. Going down the list, are multiple perspectives or positions represented? Yeah, we have pros and cons along with different angles as to why field trips are good. So I think I can safe to check that one. Is there a text to provide a background of the topic? I'm not sure I can check that one. I don't think I have anything that sets up the real reason why field trips have disappeared in the schools. So maybe I need that. I don't think anybody needs information about what a field trip is, but they might need to know why it's an argument in the world right now. And finally, is there a range of reading accessibility levels between the debate.org, the Time for Kids, and the Atlantic and the infographic? I think there is a range of accessibility levels. So before I move on then, I think about what are my other considerations. Right now, I'm going to add that I need an article about school cuts and field trips so students can have the background to set up the context. I'm going to look for one more of those articles. And then after I've done that, I have a whole graphic organizer filled with possibilities, and I'm ready to return up here to my list and make some decisions about which ones I really want to use and what order. And as I do that, I think that I definitely want to use an excerpt of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And I definitely want to use an excerpt of the infographic. We're going to use the infographic. And we are going to use the Time for Kids. And I think those three are the ones that I'm going to go ahead and use. And now I'm ready to consider the order, the reading and writing strategies, and anything else I need to do for students to use. So there's a little window inside talking through the Creating Text Graphic Organizer using field trips as a model. Good luck and happy arguing.